Welcome to the program, everyone, and really pleased today to welcome Mr. James Muir from Utah in the United States. James is the author of The Perfect Close, which is a tremendous book. It's sold exceptionally well for a sales book. I'm blown away by the numbers of this book. And James is a long-term sales leader in the healthcare IT space, and is still a practicing sales leader as well as being an author and a great sales thought leader in the world. So James, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Stephen. It's great to be on. You've had an illustrious list of guests on your show so far, so it's great to be part of that.
Well, it's getting more illustrious with you joining us as well, James. So really, really pleased to have you on here. James, what I'd like to start with is, could you tell me a bit about your story and what you saw in the market that led you to write The Perfect Close?
Sure. Well, I'm an accidental salesperson. I didn't intend. In fact, I think a lot of salespeople.
You're a technical guy, right? Or a specialist?
That's right. That's
okay.
Exactly right. So I started out as an operations person in a family-owned revenue cycle business, and I would go out with the salespeople and help them. And when they got tough questions about how we did things, I would end up answering those questions. And I remember going out with those guys and actually thinking, man, I hope I never have to do this. This is a horrible job that they have. And and here I am now,
yeah.
Right? That's all I've done. But we ended up acquiring a business in another region. And then we needed an operations person, but who could also sell, because we didn't have a salesperson. So that's how I got drafted into sales. And so basically I was this technical person in sales. And so I tried all of this, technical, operational, analytical things to sell, and I failed quite a lot. And one of the problems that I had was actually around closing. I would call it a bloated pipeline. So you've got a ton of opportunities. They're kind of in the middle, going nowhere, but they never quite get over the finish line. And so we had quite a lot of opportunities. In fact, we had one of our rock star guys, after we acquired the new place, he just left, and that left him with no salespeople. So we had all his opportunities, and actually he ended up taking some clients with him.
Okay.
So after a few months, we were kind of in this crisis mode. We're like, hey, James, if you don't deliver this, we're going to go under here. We're not going to be able to support this location.
Wow.
So there was no pressure, right? No pressure. I didn't even ask to be in sales, but you better go pull through for us, or we're all going to die here. So I tried all these different things to get these deals out of my bloated pipeline. And I've got every book on closing you can imagine. And I've tried a horrendous number of the closing techniques that are out there. All originate from the timeshare and the condo type of sales, where they've got a person, it's a fairly high ticket item, and they've only got a limited amount of time to do it, and one encounter, one meeting. And if they don't do it in that one meeting, it doesn't happen. And so there's massive amounts of dysfunction in the techniques that they are willing to try to close a big ticket item with a person when they've got them in a room like that. And someday I'll create a wall of shame that has all of these different horrible closes on there, but they're all manipulative, of course, and they all make people feel uncomfortable. And most salespeople actually won't use them. I mean, when I read them, I'm like, no way am I trying that, right? That's offensive. And the funny thing is that the data shows that not asking for a close at all, not asking for any kind of commitment at all, is really a much bigger problem than asking in the wrong way.
Okay. Yes.
Like literally 50 to 90% of all sales encounters end without any commitment being asked for whatsoever. So that's just like a mind-blowing statistic.
Yeah, that's right? The worst crime, is not asking for any commitment at all. And maybe a lot of folks are closing reluctant, right?
Well, I think in my
maybe
case,
because of the menu they're being offered by their companies, like you say, they could be, these horrible manipulative approaches.
I would agree with that 100%. If you said, hey, James, why do you think that 50 to 90% of opportunities of meetings never end with any kind of commitment being asked for? I would tell you this. It's because all the methods that they've been taught are manipulative, and they're uncomfortable for the salesperson to use. And so instead of doing what they know it makes them uncomfortable, they just don't do anything.
Yes.
And that's what's happening. That's my opinion about what's happening out there. So I actually stumbled on the second question of The Perfect Close by accident. And so
Mm.
I got to working with this client. I'm doing anything I could to get it to happen because we were so desperate for deals to come in. And they were not confident that we were going to be able to produce a result. They'd had this big problem in their organization and with their own internal people doing their accounts receivable incorrectly. And they were
Okay.
worried that we were going to have the same problem. And I finally just said, hey, does it make sense for me to come in here and analyze all that for you and figure out what the problem is and then give you a solution? And then if you like it, you can go with us or you can fix it yourself. And it worked, right? And so when I got
Mm.
to analyzing it later, like, hey, what made that work? So I could go figure out how to make it work for these other ones. It was the root of that. Does it make sense? It was just
Does
that
it
little
make
thing,
sense?
does it make
Right.
sense for me too?
Yes.
And so that's kind of where the whole perfect close was born. But
Yes.
then later, when I started managing my own teams of people, I realized that it's a problem for a lot of people. And so instead of just learning the first or the second question, I created sort of a more sophisticated way that has 5 different variations of these 2 questions. And
Mm.
basically just asking those 2 questions. And I've gone on hundreds and hundreds of ride-alongs. I can tell you that if our suggestion doesn't work, 95% of the time the customer will suggest a very logical step. And what that means is that you've always got momentum on the opportunity, so they're always continually moving forward. And I know, as I'm a manager too, the deals don't always come in when you want, but we're always getting momentum. And so if you use
Sure.
it, you end up with a very fat pipeline, and that's actually the solution to not having crazy roller coaster quarters. Is if your pipeline's big and one drops out, it's okay. I got a dozen others that are still moving forward in the
Sure.
process. It's when you only have a few and you hyper focus on those until they're closed, and then suddenly your pipeline's empty. So now we go to prospecting and we finally build it up, and you get this roller coaster effect every other quarter, really.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that's a big problem for sales leaders, isn't it? Is that roller coaster? Your team does really well. They're sort of backing off on their prospecting, or they clear their pipeline, or the pipeline's just moving out all the time. So yeah, this is going to definitely help to keep advancing sales very predictably, very steadily, and get some more predictable results. I can definitely see that. James, just coming back to some first principles, because people have got different ideas of what closing is. Closing, like we've already touched on, got a bit of a negative connotation to it, a bit of a dirty word in some
Mm.
circles. So let's maybe define what you mean by closing.
Yeah, so I actually, there's so many definitions out there of what closing is.
Sure.
Probably every sales guy has their own different definition, and there's kind of a spectrum. On one side of the spectrum, you kind of get this definition of that thing that you say that makes them buy. Right? That's one version of these definitions that you see out there, and then there's this other version of the closing question. What's the definition? It's something like closing is everything in the sale, from the very beginning of the sale all the way to the end of the sale. And
Yeah.
I believe that, by the way. But that is just so broad as to be a useless definition. And
Yes.
so a guy named Neil Rackham, who wrote Spin Selling and a couple of other
Big
books,
fan of Rackham. Yeah,
he
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, I would call him the patron saint of scientific selling,
Yeah.
because he was
He
doing
probably did the
studies.
biggest research project studying the sales ever, and nothing's been
That's
done
right.
like that since, I don't think.
Yeah, 35,000 face-to-face sales encounters they studied.
Wow.
So very big, broad base, and there's some wonderful insights that still apply today that they uncovered in the 80s when all those studies were done. But he created a very functional definition. So I just use Neil Rackham's definition, which is anything that puts the customer in the position where they have to make a commitment. Okay, that's
Okay.
it.
Yeah.
And so that's my definition of closing, is putting the customer in. So whether that's a close for a small thing like an appointment, or
Yes.
whether that's
Not necessarily
signing.
closing the deal and getting the order. It's closing for the next appointment, closing for an introduction to someone else in the organization, or some other step.
Yeah, in fact, maybe it's worth mentioning that he also coined another phrase called an advance. And that's
Okay.
his term that he another term called a continuation. What an advance is the easy definition is just moving the sale forward in a little way. That's what an advance is. So it's creating that
Yeah.
momentum. And then a continuation is the situation where the sale is going to continue, but really no progress is made. That's what his
Mm.
definitions of those. So when we say, hey, the perfect close is 95% effective, which sounds ridiculous, right? You think, wow, does that mean if I do this, I'm going to get a sale, 95% of the time when I go in there?
Mm.
Well, you won't necessarily, sometimes you will, but what's going to happen is you'll either get an advance or a close each time you use the perfect close. And that's
Yes.
understanding that, especially in a complex sale, which I mainly work with, there's a lot of little steps on our way to the big step. And
Absolutely.
so
Absolutely.
using the perfect close is a way to pace it at the rate that the customer is ready for.
No, I think that's good. So, okay, we've got the definition of closing, and we've got these advances and so forth. We talked before about one of the big crimes is not closing at all right? But also in your book, you've got a lot of data on the negative impact of heavy closing or clumsy closing or high frequency closing, if you like. So I'm wondering if you could run through some of the problems we're going to run into if we're using the wrong techniques here.
Yeah, so there's, I would say, I chose to narrow it down to just 7 myths. There's a bunch of different closing myths that are out there. The first one is that they even work, right? That these closing gambits work. And what Neil Rackham found out is that actually the people that had a positive attitude about using the alternate choice close or the atomic bomb, what would Jesus do close, or all these different kooky closes that are out there, is that they actually performed 21% worse than those who didn't believe that they worked. And so, that's probably the first thing. And then, of course, the myth that everybody knows is always be closing, right? That's the one that everybody knows because it's in Glengarry Glen Ross. Thank you, Alec Baldwin. It's so easy to remember. It will never get erased from society. It's going to be there forever. But the truth is Neil Rackham studied that. He studied that. And what he found is that past the first attempt, there's actually a negative correlation between the frequency that you ask to get something that you want, some kind of a commitment, and your success to do that. So,
and I think it's also, sorry, James, just on that one, I know it's been studied, but because people were successful even a small part of the time with those heavy closes, it created a really strong memory and a very positive memory. I used that technique and it worked without realizing that it was damaging
trust
90% of relationships along the way. You just remember the 1 in 10 that was that got a reaction, right? So
that reminds me of, I had a friend that had never gambled in his whole life, and he put a coin into a slot machine and pulled it, and it paid him out a lot of money, several $1,000s. He was ruined after that, right? Because he lucked out on the very first pull of the slot machine. And the thing is, some of these cookie closes will produce a result from time to time. But in reality, on the average, they're very dysfunctional. They're very counterproductive in lots of different ways. And you mentioned probably the biggest way. One of the studies that was done is that there was a B2B study done where they tested all these different choice closes, right? There's 6 different types of closes. And what they did is they tested whether or not they affected trust from the B2B buyer, right? And what they found is that literally every single closing tactic damaged trust. All of them did. It wasn't like one was successful and the others were bad. All of them were bad. And of course, the ones that were the most manipulative were the most. So what they found is using these in every single case damages trust with a customer. So if you use these things, the customers absolutely know what's going on. They are so educated. They know when you're using a close, they're like rolling their eyes thinking, oh my gosh, they just used the alternate choice close on me, right? Do you really think I'm that dumb? And so you're really hurting your relationship with the customer. Just be facilitative, right? As long as we're trying to help the customer get to an end and they can see that you're trying to do that, you don't got to use any of that garbage.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, James, I want to ask you a couple of things there. So, and what we're getting at here is, there's something about integrity. There's something about our value system. And in your book, you talk about having the right attitude, the right mindset, the right, serving mindset even, right? Maybe you could talk a bit about that because we can have all the techniques in the world, but if our foundation's weak, it's not going to come across authentic or it's not very useful.
No, you nailed it right there. And is that we'll just call him my mentor, Mahan Khalsa, who my book is dedicated to. He taught me that intent matters more than technique does. Intent matters more than technique. And so what that is if you go into a situation, let me give you a story. I managed a guy one time, and one of his customers called me back after he met with him, and he said, don't have that guy come out here ever again. Okay. And I said, well, God, what happened? What did he do? And he goes, that guy has commission breath. That was the phrase he
Oh,
used, right? And I didn't have to ask him what
yeah.
he meant at all. I knew exactly what he meant. It was that when he meets with me, he's just trying to get
Is
money
that
out of
what
my
buyers
pocket.
talk about? They talk to each other about guys that have got commission bread them.
Like, oh my gosh,
That's
he's the exact
impressive.
kind of guy we don't want, right? And so that's what we don't. That word commission breath really embodies the intention part of this whole thing, right? If our
Yes.
intent is to help and to serve, customers can detect that. On the other hand, if our intent is just to get money from a customer, to extract money from their wallets, they can detect that too, just like a dog smells fear. And once they detect that, what they do is the sales process becomes super dysfunctional because they know you're doing it. So they hold all their cards close to their chest, right? And
Yes.
they will not divulge information. And that suddenly makes the whole process where we're trying to help dysfunctional because I got to have useful information from you in order to be able to help you, right? And if they're not going to share, then suddenly now I'm operating in a
Oh,
vacuum and I'm
exactly.
guessing.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? Like, even the sales techniques or the sales methods we're taught that maybe aren't the best in the world, they all tell us that we have to get information from the customer, don't they? They all tell us, and we want the customer to open up and be almost like vulnerable and authentic with us. We've at least got to start off with that ourselves, right? Like, how do we expect someone to tell us the truth about what's going on if we're not being genuine ourselves?
Well, the way I like to say it, because I'm in healthcare, is that
Yeah.
prescription without diagnosis is malpractice.
Mm,
Okay, and if we can't possibly know what the right thing is for the customer without doing
yeah.
an exam first, we
Yes.
got to know what it is that their challenge is, and maybe our solution helps, but maybe it doesn't, and you can't know that until you walk. And it reminds me years ago, Johnny Carson. That just shows you how old I am. He used to have
I remember
this
him
show
too.
called
Yeah.
The Great Karnak. Do you remember? He'd have an envelope that already had the answer in it, and then Ed McMahon would ask the question
Right.
and they open it up and they already have the answer. Well, that's a little bit like how a lot of salespeople are. They already know the answer before they walk in, and that's, you got to buy my stuff, right? And so, but the customers can detect that. If they think the only thing that's on your mind is that you're going to buy my stuff, then why are they facilitating? Why are they
Yep.
talking to you? Because
Yes.
there's no value in your conversation, and that's an important part about sales today. We cannot just be people that dispense the price and the facts about our products. We have
Mm,
to be adding genuine insight. Every single meeting with the customer has to be inherently valuable in some way. And so that raises the bar of what selling used to be. Selling, and, in the olden days before the internet, people needed the salesperson to tell them facts about how their solution worked. That's not true anymore. They can get all that off the internet. They don't even need you for that. What they need is the insight and the experience that you have in selling in the area that you are, so that they can avoid any bear traps or any challenges that might be associated with it. That's what they're hoping that you're going to do. But
yes.
yet very, very few salespeople actually do that.
No, it's a great opportunity for salespeople, to understand that, to establish themselves as industry experts, and be bringing value to customers. Like, no doubt, with your experience in healthcare, um, you've got much more experience in implementing systems in healthcare operations than any single IT manager or CFO or whoever you're selling to in those operations, and you've got tremendous value to bring to them.
Well, and that's the irony, is that salespeople have a secret weapon that they don't even realize, right? Is
Yes.
that they sell whatever it is that they sell. They do that maybe hundreds, maybe even 1,000 times more frequently than their
Yes.
customer does, right? Say, even if you're in real estate, people don't buy homes that often, right?
Yes.
They buy office buildings even less often, right? And in healthcare, these big systems that we implement, they might, in once in a lifetime, they might buy it. But yet
Yes.
because of the nature of your job, you see that process, you see the mistakes people make far more frequently because you're in and out of it every day. They're doing it just once.
Yeah.
And so
Absolutely.
you've got all this ammunition that you could share with them, all this that you have the potential to give. And so that's what should be more of the focus of our meeting with the customer, is to
Yes.
understand what they're trying to do and then say, well, here's some of the risks, right? And here's how to mitigate it. And your product will be part of that. But we don't want to hyper focus on the product. We really need to actually get off of the product and get onto the result that the customer is shooting for.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. And I've heard it described as we're standing on a mountain of knowledge, and because we're standing on it, we can't see it. All right. So
Yeah, super analogy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
good analogy.
really need to realize that and bring that to the fore. So, I'm working with a few sales groups and seeing some of the team members really embracing that and just getting some fantastic results by taking that approach. James, if we also need to be planning better, and you cover call planning and account planning in the book as well. Maybe you could, and it's something that I do a lot of work with folks on, is around call planning. And it sounds simple, call planning, but there's a lot to it in my view. That there's our plan, there's the customer's objective, there's the formal agenda, there's like a hidden agenda, if you like. So maybe you could talk about how you think about call planning.
Well, so like you said, it can't, and I've created forms. So if you don't believe it couldn't
No,
be
I've got,
complicated,
I've,
it
I've got the form. No, this is not your form. This is your sort
that's
of
the mind map. Yeah.
mind map, which I found really good. That's got the call plan on there and the account.
Um, but yeah, in B2B, I mean, depending on what you sell, it can be complicated, right? All the things, all your I's to dot and all the T's to cross. But if you zoom out to 60,000 feet, I would say there's really only three questions that you have to answer. There's only three, right?
Okay.
And the first is, why should this client see me, right? And that gets to the root of our value proposition. Do you know what your value proposition is? Can you articulate that? And I'm going to be straight up with you, Stephen. I've worked with a lot of different organizations, and I am stupefied. I would say somewhere around 80% of them, when we come in and we look at closing ratios, or we look at prospecting, or we're looking at discovery, whatever it is, right? When we finally get to peeling back the onion, what we find is that their value props are not well baked. That's what we find. And so if your value proposition isn't well baked, what are the odds you're going to be able to communicate that to your customer, right? So the first thing that you need to know is, why should these guys even see me? What could I do for this customer that's going to benefit them enough that they should spend their time with me? And if you can't articulate that question, I would say that you have no business meeting with the customer, right? You should have, at the very least, you should have a value hypothesis. You should have an idea of how you could help them based on maybe work you've done for somebody else. Okay. So that's question number one. The second one is, well, what do I want the customer to do? After I'm done with this meeting, right? What do I want them to do? And that's going to end up being the subject of one of your perfect close questions at the end, when we try to ask them what do we want to happen next. You should have an ideal advance and a couple of alternative advances prepared, right? But you should give some thought about what you want to have happen at the end of the meeting, so you're not one of those 50 to 90% of meetings that doesn't go anywhere, right?
Yes.
And then the third one is a little less intuitive, but super important. And that is, how can I provide value on this encounter, right? And it's like we said before, the world has changed now. The people don't need you if all you're doing is spitting facts and pricing about your product. You have to be able to deliver genuine insight when you're with the customer. Actually, there's other ways to generate value besides insight, right? But insight is the best way. It's the number one way. And so when we think about how can we provide value on this encounter, let me give you some hope that if you spend a moment saying, hey, what could I tell them, or what could I share with them that would be inherently valuable, so that they're glad what they met with me regardless of the outcome. Okay.
Yeah.
And here's some news. Neil Raxham's group, Huthwaite, did some research, and what they found is that there were 3 scenarios where customers were willing to pay a premium for the solution. They paid more. They said, literally, I would pay more if I got these things, right? And those 3 things were this: that the seller identified an unanticipated solution. That is, you provided a solution they didn't anticipate, they didn't think of, okay? The seller identified an unrecognized problem, a problem the customer had that they didn't even know that they had, okay? And third was the seller identified an unseen opportunity, some opportunity that was right in front of them, but they didn't realize it was there. Those 3 things. And what I would say is those 3 things all have something in common, and that is that they are unexpected. Okay, so I've coined the phrase unexpected value. So when we're answering that third question, we say, how can I create some unexpected value on this encounter? Because when you do that, not only are you adding value to the customer, you're adding value to you and your product. You're literally creating a premium value for your product when you do that. So those are the 3 questions. I realize that's looking at it from 60,000 feet. But hey, why should this customer see me? What do I want them to do? And how can I add some value on this encounter?
Could you run us through an example, James, so that folks can really get this?
Sure. So in terms of
more industry, maybe.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And there's all kinds of examples. I work with a company right now that does analytics in
Okay.
healthcare. They look at claims data, and then they supply that claims data to hospitals so they can figure out what the referral patterns are. And that helps those hospitals know where the liaisons should go meet, who they should
Yes.
meet. And but what's cool about them is they have, because they have big data, they could supply a new piece of data that is inherently valuable to that. They could say, here are all of the top general surgeons in your market, and here are the people that are sending them data.
Mm.
And that is inherently valuable to them because that tells them who they should be marketing to send their surgeries to them instead of maybe where they've been sending them in the past. And the cool thing about their particular product is that it expires, right? So 6 months from now, that pattern will look a little different than it's looking today.
Mm.
And so they're not really, the utility of their product isn't diminished by them offering a free sample of their data. And
Okay.
so that's an example of at least the third one. How can I provide value? But I
Yeah.
can give you a couple other examples. In terms of, why should they see me? Well, and let's just use that last example. The reason they should see them
Yeah.
is because if by switching where the referral patterns are for some general surgeons, we could create literally millions of dollars of value
Mm.
because the surgeries are worth, they tend to be worth a lot.
Yes.
What do I want the customer to do? Well, it depends on where you're at in the sales process as to what the answer to that question is, right? So I might want to have an appointment. I want to meet with some other executives within their organization. I want to do an on-site demo. I might want to take them to a customer where they could go see what it looks like in action. So all those are possible. What do I want the customer to do? And how can I provide value? I'll tell you one that I used to use a lot is
Mm.
that there was an organization called Merritt and Hawkins, and Merritt and Hawkins would actually say, the average cardiologist to a hospital is worth, $2.3 million. And the
Yeah.
average urologist is worth this much. And so that report in and of itself was very valuable to them because they could understand
Sure.
where they should be focusing their energy. And so I told the client, hey, regardless of the outcome, I'll bring this report and you'll get to see, where the most value is in the providers that you have. And so I'd leave it, and it wouldn't matter whether they decided to move forward with me or whether they wanted to wait a while or whatever. The meeting itself was inherently valuable because I gave that. And info is a really great thing that you can use to add value to each meeting because it doesn't really cost you much.
Yes.
Right? I mean, basically, I'm printing out a piece of paper and handing it to them.
Sure.
There's hardly any cost in that. It's just you uncovering the insight or the knowledge and then incorporating that into your visit somehow. So I don't know if that's a good example
Oh,
for you, but
that's great. That's great. Now, I just in those three steps. Okay, so we've got, what's our value hypothesis? Why should they see us? And we should be really clear about that. And then there's like, what do we want the customer to do? And then how do we provide value? So, and I want to focus in on the middle one. And something you've got in your book, and something I see a lot is if there's no next step. If we don't agree a next step with the customer, or the customer is not engaging with us on a next step, it's a real test if we've got a deal or not, or if there's an opportunity or not. Don't you think? And
well, all right.
And I also talk about this in context of objection handling. If I'm not getting an objection, I feel that there's nothing to work with, right? But if I'm getting if the customer's engaging with me and saying, yeah, I'm not really sure about your service capability, or we're not really ready to move. And okay, that's something I can engage on. But if they're like, oh yeah, that all sounds nice. Oh, thanks for bringing me all this value add. Thanks for giving me all these great ideas about the industry. Thanks for helping me on how I can re-engineer my business. But then there's not that next step. It doesn't mean anything. I don't know.
Agreed.
What's the view on that?
So we can look at the actions a customer takes on a spectrum, right? On one side, the action they take is weak or zero, right? It's nothing. Or on the other hand, they're doing a lot. They're moving heaven and earth to try to make our thing happen.
Yes.
So an analogy I like to use is throwing them a ball. Okay. I didn't use this in the book, but basically if I ask them to do something, right, I'm going to throw them the ball and I'm going to say, okay, I'll give you an example. So if we're doing analytics. I say, hey, tell me what counties you want to look at data for. Okay.
Sure.
And if they throw me the ball back and they say, here's the county. Hey, they want to play ball, right? I made them do a little bit of work. It wasn't a ton of work, but it was a little bit of work. Now I can see that they're interested. But if they don't throw the ball back, what does that tell me about this opportunity? Right? It tells me that this customer is not even willing to lift a very small amount, right?
They're being polite to you.
Forward.
They're just giving you time. They're waiting till you get out of the office and they're going to move on with their life. right.
Yes, and I gave an
And you got
example
to
in the
send an
book of
email, and you got to call them, and it's going to be like dead.
right. So
Yeah.
that doesn't mean we should ignore those people, but
Yes.
what I would say is that when a customer can't come up with any logical reason to move forward, then that's telling us something about how we should invest our time in that particular opportunity. And if you have happy eyes and you don't want to hear that answer as a salesperson, I would just say, suck it up. What you need to do is you want the truth, right? What you
Yes.
if it turns out that we're not going to move forward, you want to know that as early as possible in your opportunity. And um, and so I think that what salespeople often do, and this would happen on my own teams would do this, right? They'd call me on the phone. They started working an opportunity that they should have never worked.
Yep.
It was it didn't meet the ideal customer profile. They work it all the way to the end, and now it's stuck, and they can't do it. And then they call me up on the phone. Hey, James, is there a magic thing? What's the magic thing I can say
I
that
know.
will make this non-customer turn into a real customer and buy? And the answer is there is no magic thing. You should have been a little more diligent at the beginning of the process when you were first deciding whether or not you wanted to work with that particular
Yeah.
opportunity. And if you'd have done that, you could have saved your time and gone and worked on something else.
Yeah.
And that's tough medicine for salespeople sometimes, because what it means is that there are times when you are better off, rather than continuing to work with a weak or a dead opportunity, just go out and find a new one.
Yes.
Right. And I know a lot of salespeople don't like to sales prospect, but the truth is that's, if you want to be successful, that's what you have to take a deal.
That's an ugly situation, and you often see sales reps, forcing their managers into doing ugly things at the end of quarter because of that. Because the only
Yes,
way you might save that is with a super discount or
and
some
that's
other.
if there's some interest. Right. If there's
That's
no
it.
interest, then no
Yeah.
matter discount will do it. And
Right.
I'll give you an example. If the reason that they're not moving forward is because it's a timing issue. Okay.
Right.
So this happens all the time. Timing issues are not pricing issues. And
Sure.
so sometimes what will happen is sales guy comes to me and says, hey, I'm hoping I can offer a discount to these guys. And I had a situation where that happened. We went and offered the discount, and then the customer didn't buy anyway, even though we were trying to get it done by the end of the quarter. And what the truth was is the customer was interested,
Mm.
but they didn't have their board meeting until the following quarter.
Yeah.
And so our offering a discount was nothing more than wasting our margin. This guy was already sold.
Yeah.
If we had just been patient and waited to the next quarter, it would have they'd have had their meeting, they would have bought it, and boom, we would have had our margin. But we sometimes fool ourselves into thinking, oh, it's some other issue, right? It's not a timing thing, it's actually a dollars thing. And if I just lower my price, then suddenly this deal's going to get accelerated. And probably there's a lot of guys who would disagree with what I'm about to say. But what I'll tell you, as a manager of complex B2B sales, I would say that the salesperson has maybe 10 to 15% control over the timing of when a deal comes in.
Yeah. Right.
That's
Okay.
my supposition, between 10 and 15%. And the rest of it is what's happening on the customer side that's driving the length of the sales cycle. So
Yeah.
if you're a manager out there and you're beating on your sales guy to try to get them to accelerate the sales, and you're doing all this dysfunctional stuff, all you're doing is creating a lot of stress and lowering your margins for no reason, because you
Yeah.
actually can't control those things.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right, James. So we're just about out of time for this episode, and we're definitely going to get you back very soon, and we'll have part 2 of this interview where we'll get into the details of what the perfect close actually is, and give everyone. You said you're willing to share all of your secrets about that with everyone, which is very generous. So we'll get into that in part 2. But anything you want to share before we break here?
I would just say this to sales folks is there's a kind of a misconception about what selling is for a lot of people, especially new people. New people think that selling is about persuasion, or they think it's about, pushing people into making commitments and things like that. And the truth is, selling is not that. Selling is about facilitating and helping a customer reach a goal. And so we're getting towards the end of the year now, and a lot of people are thinking about what they want their goals to be for the following year. And so which one of us would not like to have a coach that would help us with all the little steps it takes for us to reach our big goal? That's what selling is. All we're doing is we're helping the customer take all the little steps to get to their end result. And hopefully that involves your product, right? That probably will involve your product if you're talking to them. But that's what selling is. So it's not about persuasion or manipulation. It's really about just being the coach, right? It means that sales is really more about leadership than it is about persuasion. And I think once people understand that, you're just facilitating the customer getting an end result, you can really stop leaning into it and don't worry about trying to push
I
them.
like that. Yeah, the salesperson is the go-to expert. Like, are you the person the customer calls when they've got a challenge or they're thinking about doing something differently. That will be the ideal situation we want to get ourselves into.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Agreed. So that's my challenge to everyone is be a better coach, be a better problem solver, be a better teacher, right? So we can serve our clients better.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, James, thanks very much for coming on. A huge amount of value in the last 25 minutes or so. So really enjoyed that. I'm sure everyone did as well. And we'll be talking to you very soon on more about the perfect close. So thanks everyone for listening and watching. Bye for now.